when we develop marketing plans and strategies, it's important that we understand, first of all, why consumers make the choices that they do when they're choosing to have a meal or to eat. And there are five main drivers. Basically, a driver is a bucket of different reasons. The first of which is enjoyment, which is fairly self-explanatory. But an example of enjoyment where it differs across different markets. Some markets enjoy offal. Some markets don't enjoy offal. So we can modify our messages based on that. Similarly, health. Health is a key driver for purchasing food, and as Nathan said in his presentation, but from a global perspective, there are different markets which have different drivers and different makeups when it comes to health considerations. So in Japan, for example, where the 30% of the population is over 65, aspects like physical and mental well-being are really important. And you compare that to other markets like Southeast Asia, where the population growth is driven by young families and youth. The messages there around muscle development and nutrition are quite different. Trust obviously is really important. A really important driver, especially when it comes to consumption of fresh food. So knowing where your product comes from, it says what it's going to deliver, is absolutely important. And similarly, convenience. This is one of the biggest drivers. So convenience is really broad, and it looks at making sure that the product that you want to eat is readily available to purchase, and it's easy to cook. We've seen a big change in terms of convenience post-COVID, or during COVID, when internet purchase and online retail shopping really expanded, really exploded, and this is something that is a trend that's really continued. And then finally, culture and status is another demand driver, and this is an emerging one, and one which is really important for our industry. And what that is it's an emerging trend where consumers are wanting to be seen as what they eat, or what they eat as a reflection of who they are. So do they like to be seen as eating in high-end restaurants? Or do they like to, eat traditional cuisine or take risks and have something new? But always, the other thing around culture and status is the food that I'm eating, is it Instagrammable? So, that's obviously a trend that for some people, it really is important. And it's our job as marketers and from an MLA perspective to understand these trends and the difference and the nuances in markets, so that we can then inform our actions and our plans to continue to drive strong demand for Australian red meat. And when it comes to looking at the current demand for Australian red meat, you can see here that it is in a strong position. So last year we sold about 1.5 million tonnes of red meat, as I said before, across 100 different countries, and contributed to $15 billion to the industry and to the Australian economy. So to support that, we have an international markets team of 55 people who are spread across 18 different countries. And, those people work with people on the ground, customers, importers, retailers, to really help our exporters ensure that they can win with Australian red meat. And it's not just important to look at the size or the volume, but also the trend. So again, we see a very positive trend in terms of red meat growth, 19% year-on-year growth, and we've seen growth in all the different protein types, 18% for beef, up 19% for lamb, 21% for mutton, and leading the way is goat meat, which has grown at 62% year-on-year. And to ensure that we continue to, see these sorts of results, it's important that we understand, in terms of where we invest our dollars and our efforts, we invest them in the markets that we're able to make the biggest difference. And to help us understand where that is and where we need to focus our efforts, we've got a really cool tool which we can take you through when you come and visit us over in the Services Hub later on. But it's the market classification tool, which looks at really understanding those consumer drivers that I talked about earlier, overlaid with a bunch of different economic and market indicators, which will then determine whether we see a market as attractive, so in terms of its potential, in terms of its market access, in terms of its competition, and in terms of its size as well. And then also on the x-axis, we plot where we're able to make the biggest difference. So we understand, from a consumer point of view, are we able to connect with those consumers to deliver a product that meets their needs? And we have 7 different classifications. So we do one for total beef, grain-fed beef, grass-fed beef, total sheep meat, lamb, mutton, and goat. And this is an example of the market classification for beef. And you can see there that there are 4 quadrants. The bottom left-hand quadrant is basically some of those smaller markets that we look to protect our market share and identify small market opportunities to invest in, to move into another quadrant. The top left-hand quadrant is around unlocking the opportunities. So the markets that sit here potentially have market access restrictions or geopolitical sort of consequences, such as EU and China. The bottom right-hand quadrant is what we call where we stretch and protect. So again, we identify areas of opportunity. We invest in those areas of opportunity and aim to drive markets in this quadrant up to the top right-hand, which is those markets which are most valuable to us. So the US, Japan, and Korea sit in this quadrant, and we invest heavily in these markets to optimise and maximise our opportunity in the long term. From a lamb perspective, this is how lamb looks like, so fairly similar to beef, with a couple of exceptions. We see MENA, that's Middle East and North Africa. The bubble has grown there just in terms of the size of that market. And overall, the markets have moved slightly to the right, which is really because we are more of a dominant player in terms of our market share, our global market share for lamb, and have more of an ability to impact those key markets. I did just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about a couple of the key markets where we see the biggest opportunities. The United States is one of those markets that I mentioned before. It's a highly attractive market. There's an existing large trade. We've got an existing communication base with key retailers and food service operators in the market. Big growth opportunities for all of our proteins. So really from grass-fed, premium grain-fed, Wagyu, and lamb and goat is really interesting. As we can see here again, just a couple of key stats. So the US has the most number of affluent consumers in the world. And affluent is actually one of the biggest correlations between consumption of premium imported red meat. So this is a really important factor. It's our number 1 chilled grass-fed beef destination for Australia. From a lamb perspective, it's grown 95% over the last 10 years, and it's our number 1 market in the world for goat exports. Looking at lamb in the US, so the opportunity for lamb is really significant. The US consumer are big red meat consumers. So they consume 150 kilos per year of total red meat, but only 0.6 of a kilogram of lamb. So that opportunity and that headroom for growth is quite significant. Over the past year, we saw 19% growth in retail sales, which is an indication of where we see it can go. As Nathan mentioned, in the domestic market, lamb's very versatile, and the US market, with a high number of migrants across, Indian, Moroccan, Middle East, Greek, English backgrounds, for example, where lamb's really consumed. We really see this in food service, where these dishes, such as lamb korma, tangine, etc., have really grown over the past 12 months. Similarly, this is an interesting space when we look at cost of living pressures. A typical sort of trend is where we see affordable indulgences, and so consumers can spend a little bit more to receive a little luxury. And again, lamb is one of those proteins that is seen as more of a luxurious option, and affordable indulgence is a trend that lamb really taps into. Another market now that we're going to have a look at is Southeast Asia, which is slightly different to the US, but still high opportunities. So the Southeast Asian consumption of red meat is a lot lower than the US, but the growth potential is a lot higher. The reason for that is, we'll talk about it in a second, but the reason for that is fish and chicken are really the dominant proteins over there, and it's really driven by price point. But as we'll see in a second, we're expecting some growth in terms of wealth for individuals and households in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia, by the way, it's a bunch of markets including Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. So quite a diverse range of markets, all with their specific opportunities and some challenges as well. Just a couple of stats here. So as I mentioned before, household income, which we talked about was being a big correlation between red meat consumption. We're going to see 62% increase in households with over $35,000 per year, which is the key threshold that we've seen in terms of that correlation. It's still a big market, so $2.7 billion worth of red meat sales, and a really important one and a key market of growth focus for us is Vietnam. Over the last 10 years, we've seen Vietnam's growth of over 400%. And there are a couple of markets, Vietnam and Thailand, which are really enjoying strong growth, really driven by tourism. And tourism in the region is set to grow from $150 billion pre-COVID in 2019 to $350 billion, and that's going to be split across those markets. We're also seeing a growing younger population and diversification of quick food. So, emerging of cultures such as the image here is a bulgogi beef taco. And we're seeing lots of these emerging trends and different opportunities for different meat cuts. Similarly, those people are trading up into the premium premium opportunities. So when they buy burgers, instead of buying a standard burger, they'll buy an Angus or a Wagyu burger. Similarly to Nathan's presentation from a domestic market, health and well-being in this market is a real key to purchase decision. And as I mentioned before, the dominant protein in this market is really fish. And as the household income increases, we're going to see an increase in red meat consumption for beef and lamb, given that the perception is that it is a premium protein in terms of nutritional benefits. So these insights inform our international markets focus projects. So as you can imagine, over 100 different markets. In the past, we've had probably 50 or 50 plus different projects, and they've been run, individually by individuals. What we've done over the past year is recalibrated our projects to really focus on those fewer, bigger and bolder initiatives that we've got here. And there are 4 projects that we have here, which is the Country of Origin, Aussie Beef and Lamb program, the Aussie Meat Academy program, which is all about inspiration, knowledge development, and similar to the Beef Academy that Nathan talked about, but on a global scale. Also market access, so identifying new market opportunities, which we'll talk about in a second, and also building the commercial tools for our exporters in a one-stop shop, which is something that we've got on showcase in our services hub over there. So first of all, looking at the key focus projects, the first one, which is our country of origin. Now, provenance is really one of the key consumer drivers for purchase for red meat, and so associating a logo such as True Aussie Beef, where it has high awareness, is really important that we build that connection to ensure that both retailers and consumers believe that the truth in what we're saying is really there for that trusted perspective, so that they can be confident that every time they buy a True Aussie Beef or lamb, it'll provide high quality and it will be a representation of the best of Australia. And these are examples here in terms of some of the big global commercial partners who see value in associating, their business with Australian beef and lamb through putting the True Aussie logo in their business. The second program, which is the Aussie Meat Academy, which looks at building knowledge, e-learning, inspiration, is a new program this year, and it's really the flagship project in this program is its Lambassador program, which we ran this year, where we brought 27 chefs from around the world, around 10 different countries, to Australia to give them an immersion experience of how Aussie lamb is produced, how it's grown, and then also how it's cooked. And some of the culinary expertise that we have here, we were able to share with them so that they can then get inspiration and apply that in their own markets. We're also doing the same program with Aussie Beef, which is going to be kicking off next year. In terms of market access, you will have heard that there are 2 free trade agreements in place, and they're awaiting ratification. So the first of which is the UK, which will enable us to sell beef, sheep meat and goat into the UK for the first time in 50 years with quotas that will grow over the next 10 years. And then ultimately after that 10 years of entry, the tariffs will be completely eliminated. Similarly, India has a free trade agreement in place awaiting ratification. India's free trade agreement is specific to sheep meat, and again it provides an opportunity over 10 years that we see to somewhere of around $600 million in terms of new market access opportunities for Australian lamb. And then the next 2 markets that are in line for free trade agreements are the UN and the UAE. So the UN is a really big opportunity for us. There are 450 million people in the UN who are high income, who are at that high income group. So their desire and their opportunity to consume Australian beef and lamb is a big it's a big factor. And finally, the UAE, which is another area of opportunity, is being negotiated at the moment. And finally, moving on to that commercial tools, building the commercial tools, we've amalgamated 5 different websites into the Aussie Meat Trade Hub, which provides exporters with information around trade show registrations, sampling opportunities, export data, and also consumer insights, which I will give you a bit of a flyover at the moment. So anyone can access, well, stakeholders can access this information to look at the global insights, to identify those market classifications, to look at red meat growth drivers, which I haven't talked about before, but there's an opportunity to understand where best to sell your product based on its key attributes. So, for example, if it's a grass-fed product, and it has a couple of key attributes that we see, such as premium quality or antibiotics-free, and it is lean beef, for example. We can then choose this criteria, and it will download these market growth opportunities for us in a PDF file. So it'll identify the markets, those growth driver opportunities, the channels, and really provide us with a good opportunity and information to sell into the market. Similarly, we can also access it in different ways. So if we know where we want to sell, if we want to sell into Southeast Asia, and if we talked before about the nutrition opportunity, we can click on Best for Me and My Family, and we can identify, again, who the consumer target is, what the messages that they want to hear, what the channel opportunities are, and give us a better chance of success in the market. So, as I mentioned, Phoebe and myself will be over at the Services Trade Hub. If you want to talk about this anymore or any of the other global insights aspects that I've talked about before, looking forward to having a chat. Thanks very much.